Gormagat Cahirlock, and thank you all for attending the committee today and for the work that you and your local authorities do. Can I just ask a couple of specific questions from start to finish for each of you? And I want to commend you for the housing action plans that you've put before us and for the work you've already done to deliver. And I note that you've got considerable targets for affordable and social, and that's very welcome. Can I just ask you though, how long does it take you as a local authority to bring from concept to handing keys to either tenants or purchasers of affordable homes? How long does that take you typically? What impact do appeals have, or objections or judicial reviews on that timeline? How much is affordable? What is an affordable price in Limerick and Waterford? And can you also just confirm for me that your social housing lists, do they operate on a time-on list basis? You know, do people is their position on the list based on when they applied? Are you availing of the tenant in situ, the capacity for local authorities to purchase rental properties where a tenant is at risk, a private rent tenant is on the social housing list, is at risk of homelessness, has received a notice to quit? Are you availing of the tenant in situ approval from the Department of Housing? They're my initial questions. Cahirlock. We start with maybe Limerick and then go to Waterford, so that's okay? Yeah.
Great. Well, I might ask my colleague Caroline to start and then I'll jump in.
It's very hard to say how long it actually takes, but in fairness, what's often said is a 4-year period. It depends from the concept and to what happens before you get to the very end. This would apply for the social housing. The affordable homes is a relatively new concept and we're moving that on now. The affordable price, again, we have a difficulty.
Sorry, Caroline, can I just interrupt you there? 4 years for the social housing. I absolutely accept your point about affordable. It was only introduced in the last year. But if there are objections, if there is a judicial review, what additional time does that add to the development process?
It all depends on what happens. Like, I mean, if there are, I mean, most of them say are if we go Part 8s and they can go off, they can be appealed on a point of law, which is the judicial review. If it goes into a judicial review, it can be a considerable length of time before it comes out of it.
Months or years?
Years.
That's fine. That's fine. That's an adequate answer. Thank you.
As regard affordable price, I mean, the issue with the notion of affordability is to do with the percentage below the market value that you can deliver a house for. The difficulty we have in Limerick is that our market values are quite low, so and our build costs are high, so it's hard to come in below. For purchase 15%, for cost rental 25%. So it's I don't really have a price for you that I can give now. I'm sure if I ask my colleague, because they have worked a lot of examples, they'd maybe be able to give you a better idea.
Maybe you can come back. That's fine.
Idea on that. As regards the social housing list, we don't. It isn't a time on list and you get a house, because we are trying to there's an allocation policy there, and there's also a community sustainment and a need to have a mix in there. So there's a number of factors taken into account. It's not always the longest on the list. It depends on the actual need. It depends on what's already gone in there. As I said, we do try and have a mix of people.
Maybe you can just send that on. That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. For notices to quits, we have been chasing where there's a valid notice to quit served and there's no alternative for the person. We have been chasing the purchase of them, and I think we have about 17 of them in the pipeline at this point in time. But we're doing all we can that way, yeah.
Gormagat, thank you. Ivan, is it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take them in order as well. I'd agree with Caroline, and maybe I was being slightly optimistic, thinking about 3 years, but 3 to 4 years sounds about right in terms of from conception to actual delivery. The Part 8 process has worked fairly smoothly for us in Waterford, and there haven't been any major issues. In the event of judicial review, certainly you certainly be talking years of the delay. In terms of an affordable price in Waterford, I think it's more a question of what's the wrong concept here now, but what incomes can afford an affordable house, really, and we're pitching that at somewhere around early 50k gross household income, up to about 76,000, and that's kind of the way we're looking at the application process, which Michael referred to earlier for the 3 schemes we have in Waterford. And it's at that income level really we're looking at rather than the price per se, because the price will depend on the level of the mortgage. The price the purchaser pays will depend on the level of the mortgage he or she can get, plus then the level of subsidy that comes from the Affordable Housing Fund. The housing list, well, time is obviously a key determinant, but there are other factors that are taken into account, such as transfers, overcrowding, etc. The issue about buying private rented properties where tenants are either in HAP or ROS is one we are keeping under active consideration on a case-by-case basis. I'm just very conscious that there has been a bit of an exodus of landlords from both ROS and HAP, and if we were to consider buying all of them, I don't think we'd have sufficient resources for a capital
I get that.
program.
What are your homeless numbers like? How many have you either identifying as homeless in emergency accommodation?
In emergency accommodation, we currently have about 60 individuals.
60.
60, and about just under 20 families are in emergency accommodation. They're not in hostels, and we have a concept of own front door for family emergency accommodation in Waterford. So, by and large, the families will be housed in houses with their own front doors rather than in your typical emergency accommodation.
Okay. And can I ask one short question? Are you finding that the service, the subvention from the department to achieve the affordability, both of you mentioned there, the challenge between the cost of construction versus the income levels, are you finding that you've got sufficient subsidy there to be able to make that work?
I think so. For the 3 schemes we're currently operating, obviously the challenge for any future affordable schemes will be maximising the level of subsidy that we can get from the fund.
Okay. Gurmagad.
Senator Fitzpatrick.